Hello, 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 and welcome to Updog Sports Talk. My name is Matt Miller. Joining me today is Justin McGovern. What's going on, dude?
What's up? Well,
You look
it's
the wrong
time.
way. You look the wrong way again. I'm
Yeah,
over here,
you're
you.
overhearing you bastard. All right. Anyways, but yeah, it's time again to do our second edition here of our college football top 25 rankings. Um, so yeah, let's get it started here. It begins pretty much the same way the first edition did. The Georgia Bulldogs remain number one, but
This was
we
pretty
have definitely
unanimous.
Yeah, I mean, we have definitely learned a lot more about them since then. And pretty much we've learned it is their world and we are living in it. At this point, it'd be a massive surprise if the national champion is not them. Their defense is just so dominant. Their offense, Stetson Bennett's playing at a high level, honestly, low key Heisman level. Their tight ends are just absolutely ridiculous. And honestly, like you watch them against Tennessee, like they just unleashed a bunch of stuff. Went up 21-0 or 21-3, I think it was. Like, and then partially because it rained and also because they had a lead, like they just went into protect mode in the second half. So that's why sometimes their scores aren't impressive. It's kind of scary to think about though, because I feel like they haven't even revealed everything they can do yet.
Yeah, they're just toying with college football. Like, it's one of those weird times where Nick Saban is not the best on the best team in college football, and
It's
Georgia
Kirby
is
Smart.
proving, yeah, Georgia is proving that they are here to stay for quite a while. So congrats to Georgia. That we didn't like a handful of years ago, we didn't think that they'd be up here.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like, probably about 11 months ago, it felt like they had no shot. They were never going to beat Nick Saban. And then they turned around and did it. Now they've just been dominant since then. I would say at this point, I mean, unless something really crazy happens, like a loss of Georgia Tech somehow, I mean, this is the first team that has clinched a spot in the playoff. Next on our list, Ohio State. Obviously, the most impressive efforts they had were hard fought
Penn
wins
State.
over Penn State and Notre Dame. Ohio State's looked a little bit different this year, where they've been able to kind of just, they haven't been super impressive throughout those games, but they turned it on in the second half when they needed to. It's a different gear than last year, but I mean, overall, they're undefeated at this point. They haven't
And
been tested super much.
there was some disparity between who actually had Ohio State at 2 and who didn't.
I'll give you a hint. It was not the Ohio State fan.
Yeah, I know,
Of
that's
the
what I'm
two of
getting
us.
at. So the person who usually is on here bashing Ohio State actually had them at 2, despite their lackluster schedule, and then having closer games with the better opponents that they played. Um, outside of those games, they haven't shown me any reason to not have them at number 2,
Yeah.
especially
Um,
by the end of the fourth quarter, like by the time the game's over. They're like you look back at the game and you're like, wow, their offense did pretty good. You kind of forget about all their first half woes. So to me, they haven't shown a whole lot to not be number 2, especially since they started so high early in the season. So it's like you can't really have undefeateds jumping on undefeateds unless it's against a bunch of ranked opponents.
yeah. And I mean, run game still needs some work. It would be nice if they can get Jackson Smith and Jigba back for at least the Michigan game, but we'll see what happens. It sucks that he's been pretty much out all year. Um, all of college football pretty much is lost for not having him. And then obviously the running backs need to get healthy, but we'll see how it goes. Number three. Now, this is where we are different than most of the mainstream media at this point. We have the TCU Horned Frogs at number three. And the main reason why, um, I mean, just find a team that's gone through the test week after week. This team has. They found different ways to win, and they're in an incredibly deep conference. Big 12 is just very deep. Like every single team in that conference is top 50, and having to face that week after week is really tough. Like there aren't any breaks. Like, Ohio State, who we just mentioned, they got to play a game against Indiana. They got to play, I mean, even like, you even look at like some of the tougher teams like Iowa. Iowa lost to the ninth best team in the Big 12. Um, they're just, they don't get a break. Georgia's even gotten to play like Vanderbilt and stuff like that. TCU has not had that during their conference slate.
And typically a walkover like Kansas would be prime for them. But
But
even
Kansas has
Kansas
been
was
up
good.
good too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
So
while
weird
Kansas
times in the
State,
Big 12, but I actually had the next team in this spot and this team in the next spot. Mainly because Michigan it's the same excuse that I have for Ohio State. You beat Penn State and who else? Like even Notre Dame for Ohio State, not that impressive. But for Michigan, not too many impressive wins, but also hasn't shown me that they shouldn't be at the top. So I had them at 3 and TCU at 4. But I don't mind TCU being number 3.
yeah, and I mean the thing with Michigan is like they just they haven't been tested super much. A lot of their schedule has been pretty much a cakewalk, especially their non-conference schedule. Would have been a lot different had they not bailed on UCLA. But yeah, they look very good though. They don't really seem to have a lot of weaknesses. And I mean certainly though for them like it feels like I mean they could still make the playoff with a loss to Ohio State, but it does feel like for the most part for maybe them and Ohio State, depending on what happens elsewhere, but definitely for them, it feels like it could be a 1-game season in that Ohio State game.
Yeah, and I think well, we don't know because neither of them have played anyone. So them playing each other would be the first real test for both teams. And if every team loses behind Michigan, and then Michigan and Ohio State play each other, regardless of who wins that game and who loses, that would be the scenario where both of those teams still make the playoff.
Yeah, really, it's simple for Michigan to still make it with a loss. They need TCU, USC,
I like how you're just
and
assuming that Ohio
LSU.
State's going to beat Michigan.
I'm saying with a loss in that scenario. In the scenario that Michigan loses.
Mm.
Obviously, if they win, they're in. It's very
Yeah.
simple. The only time their scenario gets complicated is if they lose. It's the same for Ohio State.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not assuming anything there. I'm just saying, like scenario wise, it's cut and dry. Win out, they're in. If they lose, that's where things get interesting. Moving on to a team that has lost, but perhaps is the most impressive team that has lost this year. Tennessee is a very impressive collection of wins. And actually, there is a conspiracy theory out there that maybe they lost to Georgia on purpose just to avoid having to play in the SEC championship game. Now, of course, you wonder why that would be. You got to think back to 2017. Remember how Auburn beat Alabama by double digits. And Auburn's reward for that was having to play a Georgia team they already beat by 20 3 weeks before, again in the SEC championship. And then they end up losing that game. Meanwhile, and then they had to lose to UCF in the Peach Bowl and watch Alabama win another national title after beating them. So
yeah. So could it have been one of those? Hey, you know what? I'm gonna let them beat up on each other, and we'll pretty much just sit near an auto bid.
I mean, honestly though, that's about all we're gonna give to that conspiracy theory because I'm very sure that Tennessee wanted to win that game. They just could not. They were terrible. I mean, just dominated in all facets by Georgia. The score was not indicative for how it went, but you have to also look at what Tennessee did otherwise. They have one of the most impressive wins probably the most impressive win in the nation outside of Georgia's wins by absolutely destroying LSU and Baton Rouge. And obviously the big headliner, they beat Alabama. They beat LSU and Alabama back to back, which is kind of a crazy stretch now that you think of it. And even more so in hindsight here. So yeah, the wins are very impressive. Tennessee, I feel like at this point, is in this situation because one of Ohio State or Michigan is going to lose. Tennessee pretty much just has to win out at this point to make it. And there aren't a lot of tough teams left in their schedule to beat them.
No.
Mentioning LSU, that is who we have at number 6. Obviously, another team with impressive wins. They're the first 2-loss team in our list, though, losing to Florida State earlier in the year, and then obviously the aforementioned blowout loss to Tennessee. LSU does have impressive wins over Alabama and then also over Mississippi. Yeah, I mean, it's been pretty surprising what they've done in Brian Kelly's first year.
A little bit. Brian Kelly, as much as I want to bash him for everything he's done down there, the random fake accent, the way he left,
My
the way,
family.
yeah, I'm like, bro, chill. The music video, it's easy to root against LSU, but they've had a good roster. They haven't given up too many great players after Edo left. So they were able to hang on to mostly everyone. And then Kelly's a good coach. He just, when the game's on the line in prime time and or a major bowl game, he just can't get that one play to go.
He did until this year against Alabama. Yeah. Finally, they did it. Yeah, Jaden Daniels is looking really good too. He's a elusive player. Obviously, kind of was, he struggled at Arizona State last year. There were turnovers, probably because Herm Edwards kind of brought too much of a pro style to college with the practices where, they don't drill until things are perfect. They just kind of went along and, okay, that's the end of the day. But yeah, he's been improved a lot. And they got some young studs on this team too. But moving on to the next on our list here, the USC Trojans. They have some pretty good wins on their slate. They've looked really impressive as a team outside their defense. They only one loss compared to LSU's 2. Honestly, what put them below LSU though is just the defense scares me a little bit.
Yeah, the offense is really, really good. It's the University of Sooner, California, with all the Oklahoma transfers they got in. But the offense looks really good. Defensively, like you said, a lot of holes. They kind of rely on their offense just getting so far ahead.
And forcing turnovers. That's the other big thing is usually if their defense can force some turnovers, get off the field that way, that's usually how they do it. Otherwise, teams can move the ball on them. And that's a concern. But some big tests coming up this week. UCLA is going to be a big one. They're taking down some of the banners in the stadium to get more fans in. That might backfire because honestly, there probably will be more USC fans there than UCLA fans. But yeah,
at that point, it doesn't matter because nobody in LA goes to any game, so we could end up with like 47 people at this game.
No, remember, it's only when it's cool. And right now, it's cool because the Rams are struggling and the Chargers are also kind of struggling. But yeah, so, and really, the other thing, USC is the Pac-12's only realistic playoff hope, and they need to win out to get there. Next on our list is Alabama. This hasn't quite been the same Alabama team as usual. They have Bryce Young, who's one of the most impressive players in the country. Will Anderson's the most impressive defense player in the country. Jamar Gibbs, the running back. And quite honestly, the weird thing about this team is they don't have much else other than that. And that's really why they struggle.
They have pro players. It's just there's just aspects of their game that they're missing too many people from last year. But I mean, I don't have a whole lot of nice things to say about Alabama. I'm glad they're a 2-loss program. Hoping that they were a 3-loss program, but they pulled it out. I had them a little lower. I kind of was not too kind to them. But I get it. Nick Saban, Alabama, we'll put them at 8.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, pretty much, unless all chaos breaks out, we can consider them out of the playoff at this point.
Yeah.
Which
We
is a
got
little
like
bit weird.
15 minutes. We got like 15 minutes to do like 26 or 16 teams.
It's a little bit weird at this point to mention that because Clemson still has a playoff chance. They need to win out. They just aren't an impressive looking team, especially later in the year. And then Notre Dame finally exposed them in a blowout win. So, yeah, I mean, we'll see what they have at this point. They did
Not that
answer a little bit.
impressive. I mean, they're back up near the top. I mean, after Trevor Lawrence left, it was kind of shaky there for a little bit last year, but back into the top 10. And then the next team,
Also in the ACC, and also with a very
also
slight playoff
with
chance.
hopes. Yeah.
North Carolina. Drake May is just a dog. Like, he is so
He's the
good.
reason why they are where they're at. If they had pretty much any other quarterback, they would not compete in the ACC.
Absolutely. Obviously, the challenge is their defense has managed to keep every single team they played in the game against them. A lot of close wins, similar to Clemson. I mean, pretty much the same resume as Clemson. Bunch of close wins, not any really super great wins. Blowout loss to Notre Dame. But yeah, they really winning out is the only path to the playoff, and really even then they need some help. Oregon, a team that was just eliminated from the playoff this week.
Quack. Couldn't pass that up.
This, I know. I didn't even know we were going to do that, and then I just had to take part in it. A very impressive offense. They lost in pretty heartbreaking fashion. Bo Nix got hurt at the end of a drive, forcing them to kick a field goal instead of they would probably have gone for him 4th and short near Washington's goal line. And probably would have gotten it too. And then, so they kicked the field goal, only up by 7. Washington immediately answers. Then, obviously, they go nowhere on the following drive, the backup quarterback, while Bo Nix is getting checked. And then, for whatever reason, I mean, Bo Nix comes back to the sideline, and they don't call a timeout to put him in, and decide to go for a 4th and 1 from their own 30 with a backup quarterback. Did not go well. Washington goes down and scores a game-winning field goal. Tough way to lose.
Oregon's been up and down. I mean, they got absolutely boat raced by Georgia in week 1. And then that heartbreaking loss, it's kind of put them out of playoff contention at this point. I think USC is the best chance for Pac-12 to get in. And even then, a lot of things have to happen to get them in. So,
but I mean, still, this is a very good team in a pretty top-heavy Pac-12. So, yeah, we'll see what they have here to finish out the year. Next up, not so top-heavy, but the Big Ten. This is the last ranked Big Ten team, by the way. Penn State, they've pretty much beaten everybody on their schedule they needed to beat, but also lost to Ohio State, Michigan. That's pretty much where they are. There's not a whole lot to say about this team. They're just kind of here.
Yeah, if either Michigan or Ohio State was ranked any lower, we would have to push them down a little bit. The reason why they're at 12 is they've won in fairly easy fashion against everyone else.
I mean, really,
they even hung around with Ohio State for a while. So, I don't think they're that impressive of a team. I think it's a big difference between Ohio State and Michigan and then Penn State. And then there's a huge difference between Penn State and the rest of the conference.
That's a big gap between Penn State and the rest of the conference. But yeah, that's why they're at 12. Now it'll be more interesting with a 12-team playoff because then they're contending with all these Pac-12 teams for at-large bids. Mentioning the Pac-12, UCLA. Now this is definitely not as far as the other polls dropped them, but everyone seems to forget that UCLA did blow out Utah and Washington. This is still a really good team. The Arizona loss was nothing short of a disaster, but still some very impressive wins that I don't think they're quite getting credit for at this point.
Yeah, at this point, UCLA, Oregon, and Washington are basically the same ranked team. Um, it was hard for me to put any of them in front of the other because it's like a carousel of losses. They've all lost to each
Yeah.
other, and it's like at that point, who do you put first? And we decided Oregon on this one. Um, UCLA, not a bad team. They just get stuck at 13.
Yep. Yeah. Though this Pac-12 this year would be very intriguing to follow under a 12-team playoff.
Oh,
Just seeing the
100%.
chaos that would happen here at the end, because like UCLA plays USC, Oregon plays number 14 Utah this week. I mean, this game would have massive playoff implications under that scenario.
Mm.
Utah obviously got blown up by UCLA. They also have a not great loss to Florida in week one. But other than that, they've looked really good. They're the only team to beat USC right now. Their defense isn't quite what it usually is, but their offense is also better than what it usually is.
Yeah, they're not like when you think of Utah, you think of like Urban Meyer's style at Utah
Well,
back in the
even
day.
Kyle
And
Whittingham style, gritty,
yeah,
hard nose, win at the trenches football. And this year, they're kind of a little bit different than that.
yeah. And they just don't seem like as good a team as they were last year, despite their defense or their offense playing better. And a little out of their ordinary for them. But I like Utah. I hope they go places, but this year, I mean, I can't put them much higher than 12th. Like 12th is probably the max I'll go.
Yeah. But they also get a big chance this weekend against Oregon.
Yeah.
Well, we continue our run the Pac-12 teams here. Washington, obviously massive victory over Oregon this weekend. And it's amazing just to kind of look at the transformation, because literally last year, this team, it looked so painful watching them try to even get a yard. Their offense was so uncreative, so ineffective. I mean, just so bad that literally every single yard just looked, they made it so difficult on themselves. Now this year they got Michael Penix in there. They got a new offensive minded coach, and they're just slinging the rock all over the place. This team is fun to watch.
Yeah. Definitely a different team to watch. Um, Still don't think they're upper echelon of Pac-12 though. To me,
Yeah.
they're like that little brother that occasionally wins against Big Brother. Like, um,
I think the
they
main
haven't.
issue for them was just like that upset loss to Arizona State was a killer. That game was a
Yeah,
disaster. Now, obviously, interim coaches this year have been dangerous. Maybe that was the case there. I feel like we would definitely have a different picture of this team if it wasn't for that loss, because
yeah.
otherwise they've looked
We've
great.
actually spent the most time talking about them, so I think we can move on.
Ole Miss is next on the list here. They obviously blew a massive opportunity against Alabama. For whatever reason, just wanted to run QB draws after running with the running back worked so well, and then failed near the goal line. They ended up losing that one. Really was their first op. Really was an opportunity to grab their first real landmark win. They have a couple decent wins, but that's about it.
Mm.
But they also have only 2 losses in the SEC, so that's kind of what puts them here.
They're still a really good football team. It's just there's better teams in the SEC. Ole Miss is not going to be a place to go. I think Lane Kiffin may get some intriguing offers after this season.
Yeah, he does seem like it there, though. We'll see. Um, Next on our list, though, we go to the group of five. UCF got up here because they have some impressive wins over Tulane and Cincinnati. Obviously, the Louisville loss isn't great. That happened earlier in the year, but Louisville has also looked better lately, so it's not super awful. And then they did get housed by East Carolina, but East Carolina has played UCF really tough. But yeah, this team, John Rice Plumlee, has actually been what we talked about him possibly being in the preseason. We only tweeted preseason predictions, did not do a show. He is a running quarterback that can't throw worth a crap, and he is a perfect fit in the Gus Malzahn offense.
Yeah, they got Navy and South Florida. So if they don't win the or get into the championship, or the athletic
American.
championship, or the American Athletic Championship, then uh they completely failed. They've actually looked halfway decent. They kind of remind me of those Blake Bortles years.
Maybe even better.
Maybe.
Um, but yeah, pretty solid team. Now, next on our list, this is just a difficult team to figure out where to place them at this point because
Mm.
they have some ridiculous losses to Marshall and to Stanford,
Stanford.
yet have managed to almost completely eliminate the ACC from the playoff at this point,
Yeah.
going undefeated against that conference and really, quite frankly, looking impressive doing so. I mean, he blew out Clemson in North Carolina. Yeah, it's just kind of really
And
weird team.
they were leading late against Ohio State. So like you got to take some of those into account. But yeah, Notre Dame is a weird one. I thought about last week, or last time we did this, it was like, man, I can't even put them on here, but I need a number 25, so I'll put them there. Uh, they got a few decent wins. I mean, blown out Clemson was huge for them, and then they had a huge lead against Navy, and then Navy came storming back,
Yeah,
and it was
not
like,
usually they're
all
not
right,
built to do that.
well, this officially puts us out of the top 25. And then they came back, or they held their ground, won, and we have them at 18. I mean, not the most impressive of teams. Defense has been pretty consistent, but if the offense doesn't move the ball, then your defense isn't going to be able to hold for long.
Yeah, we have some flawed teams down here at this point.
Yeah.
Tulane is next on our list. They have made it here on the strength of their Kansas State win, which is very impressive. And I mean, overall, they looked really good as a team. They have a pretty tough defense. Offense is very solid. I mean, what a year for the Green Wave.
Yeah. I had them a little lower just because they just lost um to UCF, but I was actually rooting for them, not gonna lie. But I like I said, I have them a little lower. I mean, it's hard to put a group of 5 team in the top 25 in general, just because there's not a whole lot of competition. American seems to have like a decent competition going, but they kind of took themselves out of it by beating each other. Um, Tulane to me is a top 25 worthy team, but to me they're just a few spots lower. But yeah,
I mean,
congrats for making that list, Joe.
I feel like that's been the case since number 17, where it feels like they should be lower, but then there's no one to put higher than them.
I know.
Kansas State has looked pretty good most of the year. They lost head to head to Tulane, so Tulane, obviously we gotta respect that result, not ignore it like a lot of polls do. And I mean, obviously, so that's why Kansas State's below them. But yeah, this team's looked really good for most of the year. Beating Oklahoma State 48-0 was pretty damn impressive. And I mean, they don't have a bad loss on the resume either.
Yeah, the entire state of Kansas has surprised me this year. I didn't have very high expectations for either, and the fact that just one of them is ranked now is actually kind of nice to see. Um, the Kansas State, they've had their ups and downs all season, but literally 17 on is just awkward because it's like, yeah, you could easily just take them completely out of the top 25 very easily and just plug another team in. But um, I think Kansas State has proved themselves. I think they're worthy of top 25.
Yeah. I mean, only 2 losses in Big 12 play. That is hard to do because, like we mentioned before, every single team in the Big 12 is like a top 50 team this year. It's crazy how loaded that conference is. So, and they they need to win out, but they could. They're currently the favorite to be the team to play TCU in the Big 12 championship. Now, for one, shout out here, Coastal Carolina. I was looking for their regular logo and I stumbled upon their old logo. It looks like this rooster stubbed its toe. That's
No,
probably
that's
why they
definitely
changed
a
it.
stepping on a Lego kind of. Kind of look
Oh yeah, I know. Look, it looks like it's in pain a little bit. So Coastal Carolina, they do
that,
have a
or it's
bad
stuck
loss.
in traffic.
That too. Coastal Carolina is obviously a really impressive team. Now, unfortunately, Grayson McCall is currently hurt right now, which sucks. Big loss for all of us, really, that we don't get to see him play right now. But this team has only one loss this year. It wasn't a good loss. They randomly got blown up at Old Dominion. But you look at it though, this is a loaded Sun Belt conference, the Maiden Boys out of conference, and this team has so far gotten through it with only one loss. That's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I really like them. Who was their loss to again? Is that
Old
Liberty?
Dominion.
Old Dominion.
Yep.
Old Dominion did not do well at all.
um,
They went
I
3-7.
I believe Old Dominion has ceased winning ever since this game.
Yeah. No, because I remember them, like, everyone's like, oh, cool, Old Dominion's undefeated and playing Coastal Carolina. Let's have game day go there. And then yeah, or no, they were 2-0, but yeah, you get the point. I wanted to put them so much higher, but with that loss, it's hard to. Um
Yeah.
Top 25 worthy. They only have one loss, so you might as well put them in there, but um I don't think they're making the playoff unless a lot goes wrong.
No, they're not making the playoff. Really, the New Year's Six bowl bid is what's on the line here. They need to win out, and they need some chaos from the American. Mentioning the
Oh
American,
yeah.
we have another team, the Cincinnati Bearcats. They've been inconsistent this year, struggle with mistakes. Obviously, you can expect that from a team that lost so many starters from last year. It's still impressive that they're hanging on here, and really, in a few weeks, the game against Tulane will decide if they can make the American Championship or not.
Yeah, I mean that's going to be a huge, huge, huge game. Um, and also decides who moves up our list and who moves out. I had Cincinnati a little higher. I'm a little biased, but I honestly think they've played some very good football, except for because if you remember, Arkansas started the year on fire, and then just I'm pretty sure have lost every game since, just like Old Dominion. Um, and then they've had a few bad losses here and there, and you're just like head scratchers.
Yeah.
But
Well, not really any bad losses. They've only lost two this year, one to Arkansas, one to UCF. And I mean, both games you can look at it and go, like, if they didn't make like 15 different errors, like they would have, like maybe five less false start penalties. Maybe Ben Bryant doesn't throw this pick, or I think it gets UCF show the worst awareness in the end zone ever. Like if he doesn't
no,
make
that
those
was last
mistakes.
week, and they won by a lot.
Oh, I know. But, I mean, even against UCF, he has terrible awareness in his own end zone. I don't know why it is. It keeps
I
happening.
don't know. He
Um,
he's weird. He'll throw for like 400 yards and have four
mhm.
touchdowns, or he'll throw for like 112 yards and throw three or four picks. It's
He's
like
very streaky as a passer.
yeah,
Um,
it's like when NCAA football has you like it decides that you're going to lose that game, and there's nothing you can do about it. It just decides that you're going to throw a bunch of picks and give the ball back to the other team. Like that's Ben Bryant.
yeah. So yeah, struggling consistency, but this team is still pretty solid. But yeah, definitely you look at their own errors, and they could, if they didn't commit those, they could have won every game.
Yeah.
Um, Florida State's next on our list, obviously, for being this far down, they do have an impressive win over LSU to start out the year. And late in the year here, they've kind of picked up some blowout wins against. Oh, well, Miami's not okay. They're a big name, but Miami's absolutely terrible this year. And then they beat Syracuse, who's falling apart. Um, but yeah, I mean, overall, it's been a pretty solid year for Florida State. You would have liked to see them be able to beat Wake Forest at home, or not collapse against NC State and their backup quarterback. But overall, this team is pretty solid, though.
Yeah, I mean, I got nothing terrible to say about him. I love Travis. I loved him since he decided to torch the Notre Dame defense like what 4 years ago. Um, I think he's
Yeah.
a talented quarterback, and I think they could have done better this year, but um, they're not in bad shape. Still a decent bowl game. Still walk out with a win. Been like Florida State. Let's get some 3-star recruits.
Hey, I mean, being ranked this year is major progress for Mike Norvell and co. They haven't even made a bowl game in a couple of years.
Yeah, that it was a very hard rebuilding project, but yeah.
Yeah. Next on our list is Oklahoma State. I mean, they looked really good for a lot of the year. They just kind of they had a bit of a meltdown there for a little bit, getting blown out by Kansas State, getting blown out by Kansas. But obviously, like they still have impressive wins. They beat Texas. And I mean,
I wouldn't say
overall, like
Texas is that impressive of a win anymore.
it's still a good win. I mean, they they're probably just outside this top 25. So, but yeah, I mean, they managed to grind out some tough wins in the Big 12. Big 12 again, very tough conference, but yeah, I mean, obviously dealing with some quarterback injuries hasn't helped either. But I mean, they're still a pretty decent team. They at least deserve this spot over some other teams.
Yeah, and they seem to have just missed a couple of steps from uh their their season last year. Last year they kind of snuck into New Year's Six Bowl with Notre Dame, and then randomly come out with looking like I don't know the Bills early in the season. Uh, and then this year they looked like they were actually going to be one of the best teams in college football, and then just kind of fell apart a little bit. Um, I didn't have them in the top 25. I had them actually kind of close, but because they were close, and Justin, you had them ranked a little higher, they averaged out to 24. So I don't hate that they're here. I just think there's other teams that we could put in their spot.
Yeah, I personally did not. I felt like there weren't really any teams to put above them. It gets kind of messy when you get down here.
Oh yeah.
Oregon State is next on our list. I mean, they've looked like a pretty solid team this year. They don't really have any wins that stick out, but all three of their losses have happened to teams ranked in the top 15 of our poll. So, I mean, a little bit of a cleaner, more cut and dry team than some of the other ones that we considered. But yeah, they managed to get number 25.
Yeah, they've outside of those teams, they've blown everyone else out. And the USC game was actually very close.
I mean, honestly, like they lost to USC and Washington on the road, or they played USC at home. Washington was on the road, though. They lost to them by a combined 6 points. Not
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah, not bad at all. Well, that is our top 25. We'll see what happens tomorrow, recording Monday. And then it comes out on Tuesday. So by the time this is posted, it'll already be out. We don't know what it is right now. So this is going to be a fun video to post after the fact. Justin, any last thoughts?
Nope, none for me. Running low on time here, but yeah, fun to rank some teams.
Yeah, follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, all at Updog Sports Talk. And then give us a subscribe. Give us a click the little bell and get notifications. Like, comment, share the love with us. And that is it. We love you guys. We'll see you.
See you, everybody.